All right. So I'll tell you this. Every single Torah portion, every Torah portion is important. And there are 53 of them, numerically equivalent to the Hebrew letters Nun Gimel. Reversed spells the word Gan, which means garden. So all the Torah portions are important, and all of them are significant, and all of them have wonderful lessons. But I don't know, few portions have as much of an impact as this week's Torah portion. Few portions have such a historical impact as what we're about to do together today. It's huge. It's huge what happens in this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion is Shelach. Shelach means send. And it tells the story of the Meraglim. Meraglim were the spies that Moses sent on a mission to scout out the land of Israel before the Jews would conquer the land, before they were to enter the land. So they sent spies. Moses sent spies, 12 spies, one from each of the tribes. And their job was to scout out the land. They failed in an epic way in their mission. We're going to discuss what was the thought behind the mission, what were the parameters of the mission, what did the spies come back with, where did the spies go wrong, and what are the lessons for us, you and I, today. Maybe you're not a spy. Maybe you are a spy, and that's kind of cool. By the way, if you're a spy, that's awesome. Don't tell me. Like, keep it a secret. If you're in the CIA, I don't need to know. Let's just, sure, you're doing whatever you're doing. This will be our secret. That's the whole thing. But here's the thing. Even if you're not a spy, see, I said even. I'm assuming you are. But even if you're not a spy, the lessons of this week's Torah portion are incredibly impactful. Again, the Torah portion is Shelach. I am going to share my screen with you because sharing is caring. Okay, here we go. Numbers chapter 13, Shelach. That's how you spell Shelach. A lot of consonants in there. You notice that? Shelach. One vowel. Some people write it shots and ideas and commentary, but I want to do a few things. I want you to get the story, like solid, and then we're going to jump in. We're going to layer on top of this some magic sauce. Okay, so God speaks to Moses. This is how things usually unfold. God speaks to Moses, and here's what he says. Pay attention. Send out for yourself men who will scout the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. You shall send one man each for his father's tribe. Each one shall be a chieftain in their midst. There you have the command. One sentence, one verse, sets out the agenda. Famous last words are, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? Send out, folks. Yeah, some people say, you know what the problem was? Men. Send for yourself men. Send the women. The women always loved the land. The women always stayed out of trouble. They never sinned with the golden calf. They never wanted to turn back to Egypt. But no, he sends the men. Okay, sends the men. Which men? One man each for his father's tribe. 12 tribes, 12 leaders, 12 spies. There you go. The commentaries notice this word right here, the word that I just highlighted. Send out for yourself. In the Hebrew, it's a two-letter word. The first word of that verse, Shelach, which is the name of the Torah portion, Shelach lecha. Send out, or send, lecha, to you, or for you. There's a Torah portion at the beginning in the book of Genesis called Lech lecha, which also is weird. God says to Abraham, Lech lecha. Lech means go, lecha to you. Go to you. Go away from you. Or start going. What's this go to you? We'll have to leave that for another time. But what is the shlach lecha? Send. In other words, in Hebrew, the verse could have omitted the second word. It could have just said shlach anashim. Send men to scout out the land. Simple. Right? What's the lecha? Total extra word. Send out, in the English is two words. Send out for yourself. For yourself. It's not for yourself. It's not for Moses. Rashi, let's toggle. Oops, hit the wrong button. Let's toggle Rashi. Here. Send for yourself. Rashi explains the words for yourself. What does it mean? according to your own understanding. God is saying, I want you to make this decision. I am not commanding you, but if you wish, Rashi says, you may send. That's what God is saying to Moses. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You decide on your own. Now, what's the background here? Rashi continues. Since the Israelites had come to Moses and said, let us send men ahead of us, as it says, all of you approach me in Deuteronomy, Moses took counsel with the Shekhinah, with the divine presence, and God said, I told them that's good, as it says, I will bring you up from the affliction of Egypt. So by their lives, now I will give them the opportunity to err through the words of their spies, so that they will not inherit it. Okay, it gets a little harsher at the end, but let's understand what Rashi is saying. At least the first part of Rashi. Here's what happened. Let me fill in the rest of the story. The people came to Moses, and they said, we know what the plan is. The plan is that we're going to go to the land of Israel, but we're a little bit concerned. We're concerned, what are the people like? What's going on? What's on the ground? Is it strong? Is it fortified? Are we strong enough? Can we do it? All that stuff. So, let's send spies. Let's send men, representatives, to scout out, to check out the land, and then report back. That was their proposal, the people's proposal to Moses. So what does Moses do? Like any good Moses, what does Moses do? The people have a proposition, the people have a proposal. What does he do? He takes it up to God. He says, God, the people are asking to send people, to send men. What should we do? God says, you're on your own, bud. Okay, maybe he didn't say bud, but he said, you're on your own, Moses. Do whatever you want. If you want to send, send. If not, not. But it's up to you. Now, we need to jump in right here. First of all, what's going on? Why did the people ask to send men? Number one. Number two, why the hesitation for Moses? Number three, why is God not giving a clear answer? Number four, if God knows that this is going to be a problem, why doesn't God jump in and stop it right now? Right? God certainly knows the future, you would think. So, he is God after all. So, if God is God, right? So, why doesn't God say to Moses, by the way, I think it's a very bad idea. Don't do this. Just tell the people, don't worry, you'll be good. We're going to go into the land and conquer the land, and that's it. Why does God allow this mission to continue? Why doesn't God give any clear guidance or advice? After all, Moses is asking for guidance, and God is, in a sense, relinquishing or just giving away that responsibility or that care or that help. So what's going on with this? So let's go through this story a little bit. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can look at you as I speak a little bit better. So here's what's going on. The people, as you recall, the people had been slaves. Just 1 year prior, they had experienced the exodus from Egypt. So these were a people that were very much defined by what we would call perhaps a slave mentality, in that they were new to freedom and a little bit gun shy. You ever hear that expression, gun shy? Yeah, they were a little bit afraid of conflict. They had been in conflict, in severe conflict, severely traumatized. I'm giving you an explanation, by the way, that Maimonides gives in Mor Nevuchim, Guide for the Perplexed. Just to get a sense of the emotional disposition of the people. The people were not necessarily ready for a fierce battle. And so they go to Moses and they say to Moses, look, we want to send people in advance. We're not ready to go in. We're not. Please send people ahead to check out the land and let us know what's going on. What's going on? What are we getting ourselves into? Moses is unsure because what he senses is there's a little bit of hesitancy, right? There's a little bit of apprehension from the people, and he knows that could go very sideways. If the people are apprehensive, then this could be a complete disaster moving forward. So he goes to God. God says, I'm not getting involved. You make the call. So why doesn't God get involved? So here I need to jump in and give you another layer of explanation. There are two ways in which things can happen, top down and bottom up, when it comes to God. So either God can dictate exactly what we're doing and jump in every time we're about to make a mistake, and stop us from to figure things out. I started the class today. We had a bit of a quick discussion about the sin of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. God did tell Adam and Eve what to do, but at that point, he left them up to their own devices. It's not like God swoops in the last minute, knocks that apple. It wasn't an apple, by the way, but I'm just using apple because that's what everyone thinks. Knocks the apple out of Adam and Eve's hand. It was either a pomegranate or grapes or whatever. Knocks the fruit out of Adam and Eve's hand and says, don't do it. It's not what happens. God doesn't swoop in. As much as we would love for that to happen sometimes, that's not exactly what happens. Now, why doesn't it happen? It doesn't happen because that would undermine the whole purpose of creation, which is for us to choose the right path of our own free will. So you need a balance. You need two options for there to be choice. But you also need there to be a lack of compulsion, a lack of coercion from above in order for that choice to truly be free. And so that's what's going on in life. And in the Bible, we have this tension between God wanting to inform and wanting to guide and educate and mentor, but God also giving space to people. This is a prime example, maybe the first example. Well, I guess there was another example, but this is a prime example of God exercising that restraint in space with regards to the people. God is telling Moses, I've told you so many things. I've told you to tell the people so many things. This time, I'm going to let you make your own decision. This is now mode 2.0. 1.0 is, I'm telling you what to do. 2.0 is user-driven. Now you're going to choose your path. The people are going to choose. You're going to choose. You're going to be empowered as a leader to make your own choices. That's it. In other words, God is introducing now a gray area, even from the perspective of the top down, so to speak, where you're not going to get clear guidance. Because life is like this, right? Real life is like this. Real life dilemmas are such that even when you look for guidance, let's say in Torah, maybe it's not clear cut 100%. Maybe there's some gray. And maybe that's when God says, I want you to choose for yourself. And you know what? It could be amazing, and at the same time, it could be devastating. Right? But that's what life is. And you learn from your mistakes, you pick yourself up, and you move on, and you keep on going. And that's what happens here. God says, I don't want to get involved, because entering the land of Israel is going to mark the 2.0 stage. That's the missing piece of information that I'm sharing with you right now. Because that crossing that threshold into Israel will signal Jewish life 2.0. It's not going to be God rescuing you from Egypt, 10 plagues, splitting the sea for you, giving you the divine revelation at Sinai. That's all 1.0. That's all top down. This is now going to be 2.0. 2.0 is where you make the call. You make the choice. In Israel, no more clouds of glory, no more manna from heaven. You're going to have to get a job. Yeah, a real job. Get money. Get food. Farm the land. All that stuff. That's it. And every time you have a question, are you going to be able to rely on God giving you an answer through some sort of miraculous communication? No. You're going to have to do your best, using the framework, using the wisdom that God has given you, using the tools of 1.0, to then do your best in this 2.0 modality. So in connection with entering the land of Israel, God says, I'm not going to revert to the 1.0 way of transmission of telling you what to do and guiding, holding your hand through every step of the way. No, it starts now. We're talking about going into the land of Israel. Great. That's associated with 2.0. Fantastic. Moses, you make the call. And he makes the call. And Moses says, you know what? You want to send people ahead? Let's do it. Let's roll the dice. And you know what? It's a disaster. And they wander because of this for 40 years. Because the spies came back and they gave a negative report about the land, essentially saying the land is way too formidable. The land is way too scary. The land, the people there are giants. The cities are fortified. They're locked down. They're fortresses. There's no way we'll be able to conquer it. And the people panic. The people panicked and they said to God, why are you doing this to us? They said to Moses, why are you doing this to us? Why are you leading us on a suicide mission. Because of that, God says, you're not ready? Fine. You're not ready? I'm not going to force you. This says yes. And what happens is, the people come back, the spies come back, and they come back with a negative report. And because of that, the people wander for 40 years. It is, like I said before at the beginning of the session, it is a disaster. It's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate that happened, right? But that's what God wanted. God wanted people to be able to make their choice and to then live with the consequences. Getting back to Maimonides famously said, Karen's asking, wouldn't the punishment of 40 years deter decision making? Yeah, well, okay, so that's what I was about to add what Maimonides says. Maimonides says that the 40 years wasn't as much a punishment as it was a natural consequence, as I alluded to before. These people who were the first generation out of Egypt, right? They had been slaves in Egypt. This is the first time tasting freedom. What God is saying is clearly they're not ready yet for a major battle. They're not ready. I mean, they lived through trauma, and they got themselves out of that place of trauma, right? They were able to extract themselves from that space of trauma. So and they weren't ready for the next battle. Sometimes you go through a lot of trauma. You're not ready to take on another major battle, another life, another mountain. You climbed one mountain, you got through it. Okay, that's going to be it. So God says to Moses, tell the people, I know we're jumping ahead of the story, but the ultimate end of the story is 40 years wander in the desert. This generation will not enter the land of Israel. Is it a punishment? According to Maimonides, it wasn't a punishment. According to Maimonides in the Guide for the Perplexed, it wasn't a punishment, it was a concession. It was actually a kindness. It was a concession to where they were emotionally and intellectually, psychologically. It's where they were up to. They weren't ready to God was not going to force them into that place. So 40 years would be the natural time that it took for that generation to naturally pass away from old age, and then the next generation to resume that. 40 years, imagine if the youngest, the span the span of the counting, if you recall, of the military age was 20 to 60. So what it means is those that were 20 at that point would be 60 at the end of the 40 years. So that was kind of like that span, that natural lifespan, so to speak. They would pass away. The children who were born in freedom, they would, or at least had a different perspective on the whole thing, they would be the ones to enter the land. But it was still upsetting. You know, it's upsetting to find out that people aren't ready for a challenge. So certainly Moses is upset, God is upset, but it's less of a punishment and more of a natural thing. Now, would that deter people from making choices? I don't know, but I don't know that we have a choice, because if you're not getting that clarity from above, from top down, so what's your next option, right? Like what's your backup plan, right? There's only so much you can do, right? There's only so much you can do to actually to try to get that guidance. So ultimately we are on our own, and I think the point was that after 40 years we'll have that built up, that inner strength, that when we do enter Israel, the people were able to take on those challenges and chart their own course. And has it been perfect? Of course not. Do we make mistakes? We still make mistakes all the time, and we get ourselves into trouble, and we make ourselves go and delays and what's the word I'm looking for? When you get rooted around something. Help me out here. Unmute yourself. What am I? Oh, detours, right? We send ourselves on detours all the time. So it happens. So we're still not in that space of perfection. Circles, right? Going in circles. So let's get back to the narrative, because it's very interesting. I want to get back to sharing my screen and to showing you what? Oh, Susie asked before, are any of the spies the same as the heads of the tribes who brought the gifts? No. These were different people, a different set of representatives of the tribes, who were the ones to lead this mission. So let's jump back into the text. I will now minimize Rashi, hide Rashi's comments, and here are their names. Oh, look at this. Look at verse 3. So Moses sent them from the desert of Paran, that's where they were, by the word of the Lord. Oh, by the word of the Lord. I love that line. By the word of the Lord. God didn't tell him to send them. What does it mean by the word of the Lord? By God's concession. Because God had said, do whatever you want. So therefore, in a roundabout way, it was by the word of the Lord, even though it wasn't directly. All of them, look at this, were men of distinction. They were the heads of the children of Israel. This is kind of foreshadowing another major teaching, which is no one is impervious to challenge. In other words, no one is bulletproof. Even these people that were, quote, men of distinction. If the Torah calls them men of distinction, it doesn't say that Moses thought they were men of distinction. It says they were men of distinction, which means they were very honorable people. They were Rashi B'nai Yisrael. They were the heads of the people. They were leaders, and true honorable individuals. And yet they became afraid, and they got scared, and they fell into a negative place and gave a negative report about the land, which revealed their somewhat of a lack of trust in God's abilities. And that was a mistake. But you need to know this, they were men of distinction. Once again, the message is no one is beyond making a mistake. If you think, if anyone ever thinks that they are beyond, error, or someone else is beyond error, no, that person is too holy to make a mistake, the Torah time and again tells you, don't believe that. Don't trust in yourself, and don't trust in someone else that much to think that they can't make a mistake. Okay, and then it goes through the names of the tribal leaders. These representatives: Shamua ben Zakor, Shaphat ben Chori, Kalev ben Yefuna. You have the names. Two names that I'll mention: Caleb and Hosea, who became Joshua. These were the two spies out of the 12 who gave a positive report, who came back with a positive report. 10 out of 12 came back with a negative report. It was only Caleb and Hosea or Joshua who came back with a good report. Look at verse 16. These are the names of the men Moses sent to scout the land. And look at this, name change. Moses called Hosea, the son of Nun, he called him, instead of Hosea, he called him Joshua. And Rashi points out, why did he rename him? He added an extra yud to the beginning of his name. I'll show you in the Hebrew. Instead of Hosea ben Nun, it became Yehoshua, with a yud at the beginning. We know yud is the first letter of God's four-letter name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, which means that Moses was adding a letter from God's name to Joshua's name to make him Joshua or Yoshua. Why did he do so? Rashi says, because he was offering a prayer, may God grant you the strength to resist the temptation of the spies. Moses knew that this mission was going to be fraught with difficulty. He blessed Joshua. He blessed all of them, but Joshua he gave a special blessing. Joshua, we know, was from the story of the sin of the golden calf. It says that Moshe came down the mountain to check on the sin of the golden calf, and there Joshua was away from the camp. Joshua was waiting at the foot of the mountain. Why? Because Joshua would never depart from Moses too far. Joshua was like the primary student of Moses. So he gave a special extra blessing to Joshua that he would not be influenced in any negative way if it were to come to that. Okay, let's continue very quickly. Moses sent them on the mission, and he said, so here, look at the mission. Moses says, go up this way in the south and climb the mountain and see what kind of land it is, verse 18, and the people who inhabit it. So check out the land. What kind of land is it? And check out the people. Are they strong or weak? Are they few or many? And what of the land? Is it good or bad? And what of the cities in which they reside? Are they in camps or in fortresses? In other words, are they like living in tents? Or are they living in fortified cities with walls and towers and barbed wire? What is the soil like? Is it fat or lean? Are there any trees in it or not? You shall be courageous and take from the fruit of the land. And it was the season when the first grapes began to ripen. So this takes us to the end of the first reading. Tomorrow we're going to do readings 2 and 3. But this sets up something very fascinating. Because what we see here is that the spies were sent. They weren't even called spies, by the way. They were just told They were appointed as men, as people, to scout out the land, to tour the land. Take a tour, go check out the land, and come back and tell us what kind of land is it, what kind of people are there, what kind of cities are built up. Come back with the information. Give us facts on the ground. This will foreshadow the mistake that the spies made. The first mistake was they thought they were spies. They were not spies. They weren't spies. Spy implies that you're like figuring out stuff on the ground. They weren't meant to figure out anything. They were meant simply to take a look at the land, assess it, and come back and report back to give a report as to what was the condition of the land, the people, and the cities. That was it. What's the condition on the ground? They came back, as we'll see tomorrow, and said, the land is such and such, the people are such and such, the city are such and such, and therefore we won't be able to conquer the land. That was way beyond their pay grade. They were not empowered. They were not charged in this mission to come to conclusions, to make strategic decisions. That was not their mandate. That was not their mission. So they overstepped their mission. They thought they were the ones. They were the generals. They weren't the generals. They were just the people going on an all expenses paid vacation to the land of Canaan to eat some food, come back with some tchotchkes, come back with some souvenirs, come back with some grapes, some fruit, come back with some souvenirs. That's all they were meant to do. But they thought they thought they were the spies. They started, they got excited. Because they got excited, that's kind of where it went a little bit sideways. Okay, so that takes us to the end of today's session. Tomorrow we're going to explore more. This is a multi-session story. In many of the Torah portions, we've always had, we've had stories that have been contained, or lessons that have been contained in one reading, so you're able to cover it, get in and get out. This one is a bit of a cliffhanger. We have the opening piece, we have a middle piece, we have a conclusion piece. So it's going to, over the next few days, we're going to have different parts of the story. But I'll say what I said before at the beginning of the session, which is this is a seminal moment in Jewish history. I mean, this pushes off the trajectory of going into the land of Israel for 40 years. Again, spoiler alert, that's what happened. So it's very important to understand the story, the dynamics of the story, and to walk away with some messages. So the first lesson that we have from today's session already is the fact that God wants us to make our own decisions. God, of course, gives us guidance, some do's and don'ts in Torah, but life is, I would say, primarily comprised and composed of the gray areas. You're not going to find clear Torah guidance. When I say clear, I mean like crystal clear, 100% clear every step of the way. That's where we come in, our choices. God says, I want you to choose. So we have to choose wisely. We have to choose that's in a way that's based on Torah's directives, and understand also we shouldn't be afraid to fail. If we make a mistake, God knows we're going to make mistakes. God knows we're not perfect. God knows our imperfections more than we know our imperfections. We pretend sometimes that we're not imperfect. God certainly knows our imperfections. So never let that get you down. Never let the imperfections or the possibility for failure get in the way of making a bold choice. And if it goes the other way, all right, so then correct. And hopefully it doesn't take 4 years to get back on track. So that's one lesson from today. The next lesson, of course, is understanding the last point that I mentioned is understanding the mandate that you've been given, and not to deviate from that. If you're a spy, then you're a spy. But if you're a scout, you're a scout. And scouts are not spies, right? Scouts are not spies. That's it. I wasn't a scout, by the way, a Boy Scout. I was never a scout. So I don't know exactly what that means in American parlance, but I'll tell you what it means in biblical parlance. They were meant to go on a vacation and come back with postcards. That's it. That's it. What does the city look like? What kind of food is there? What are they eating? And what are the people like? Take some tourist shots, right? Take some street photography, do a little sightseeing, come back with information. That's it. Spy, covert operation, secret spy pan and cameras. Don't go overboard. They got really excited, and they stumbled over themselves. They thought they elevated their mission in their own heads. They took it way beyond, And they came back and they had meetings with the people. We'll see tomorrow. Meetings, high-level meetings. This is what's going to happen. This can't happen. This has to happen. Whoa! What's going on? So in life, here's my final point. In life, God tells us pretty much in general like where we're headed. Right? We shouldn't be the ones to tell God it's not going to happen. Can't do it. Sorry, God, we can't do it. I know you want me to do this, X, Y, and Z, but sorry, it can't happen. That's not our job. Our job is not to make that call. Our job is to just figure out the best way to make it happen, not to figure out whether or not it's going to happen. Does that make sense? The spies were meant, they weren't spies. These 12 men were meant to figure out the best way, or to help with the intelligence, to then figure out the best way to conquer the land. Not if it could or could not be conquered in the first place. We should not play God and make the decisions whether or not, like God says, I want you to bring Mashiach, make the world a better place. We're like, sorry, it's not going to happen. We're not on that level to make that call. Our only job is to figure out the best way to make it happen, not if it can happen. So let's remember our place, which is, I don't mean to in a negative sense, but in a positive way. We have a tremendous role in this, in getting the job done. But we should never question whether or not the job can be done. Let's not be discouraged, even from something like today. Let's not be discouraged and think of the world and people as dark and messed up and whatever it is. And let's remain positive and remain hopeful. The question is not if, the question is how. The question is never if, the question is just how. Thank you for joining me today for a very exciting and a very surprising Daily Power Parsha.